there's a lot of good reasons to stop a conversation. And I think one of the best reasons to stop a conversation would be to interview a former world champion who has shared the ring with fighters such as Osaleno Freitas. Joining us today, we have the great Welshman, Barry Jones. And I'm going to let Ozzy take care of this interview. But Barry, we're glad to have you with us today at the Boxing Asylum. Thank you so much for sharing your time.
Hello, Barry. How are you doing?
Can you hear us?
I can hear. Oh, yeah. Sorry, I can.
Yep.
Just you're good a little bit, but no, I can hear you fine now. Yes.
Excellent.
Brilliant. So, I'm sure for all the listeners and the viewers, as we're live on YouTube now, you can see that we're welcoming Barry Jones, former world champion and now esteemed boxing pundit. Very much a have microphone will travel, appearing up on all the TV screens at the moment. But Barry, you can tell we were just talking about the Ryan Garcia Luke Campbell fight from last weekend. What did you make of it?
Yeah, I thought it was good. It was a coming of age fight, wasn't it, for Garcia? And there were plenty of questions still to be asked of him, and I think he answered them. And I think the going down, when he got caught, I think you guys already mentioned about his being flat-footed. I think his leg. I was going to say his legs are straight, but his back is straight as well. His chin's high, so he's actually a very straight, the sort of target. So that just means doesn't mean I think he takes a shot, because the way he got up straight away and carried on shows he takes a good shot, but he goes down because his balance is poor. Now it's a weird thing to say, because he has so many good qualities, but a few real bad things as well in his makeup that will sort of, for me, would put him slightly behind Teofimo Lopez and also Gervonta Davis, to be honest, because I just think that he has really fast hands and obviously has plenty of power, and that gets him through. And it got him through against Luke Campbell, and it might get him through against everybody. But I mean, he's not working on his flaws because his strengths are so good that they're just doing what they're meant to do. Now that should be, maybe you could say, well, he's fine then. He's doing okay, because his power and his speed, especially his fast twitch fibers, he's so reactive that he's a hard man to come to figure out, because he can counter so fast. But if you can hit him, and especially a bigger hitter than Campbell, when his legs are really straight and he's flat-footed on his heels, if you will, then he could be hurt, and that's a worry. So I think there's things for him to work on. I wouldn't want to rush him. He has a massive platform, and he looked really good against Campbell. And it was a good fight for him, and a real step up in class. When he answered all those questions, and he came out on top. So he's proved he's world class. He proved that he's world championship material. I still think he's there now, but I wouldn't go rushing straight away. But I do like his ambition that he does want to fight the other champion straight away, because that's not always the case.
Who would you look to match him next with then, Barry? I mean, I think a lot of us agree that we probably wouldn't throw him in with the likes of Tank, Teofimo Lopez. Who would you look to match him with next? Because it's a red-hot division at the moment. There's going to be a lot of calls for the big fights.
It is, isn't it? It's hard to say. It's maybe Linares, because Linares is still a quality operator, but he is on his last legs. You have to say that now. You can't keep going to the well forever. So he's still a guy who could beat him, but that's a great learning fight as well, because he'll learn so much being against a top class operator who's probably, he's not probably, he's definitely over his peak. He's good enough to beat you. So I think that's the sort of fight he would learn a lot from, and still a risky fight to take. But yeah, before he gets to a genuine world title, I just think Lomachenko, apparently now Lomachenko doesn't exist anymore, so you fight Lomachenko. He's lost one fight and he's absolutely useless. So let's get him in the ring. But yeah, there's people like that who you still want to avoid yet. He still needs that experience at this highest level. I would feel, even though he's a marketable fighter and you can cash in on him straight away. I think he doesn't take a lot of damage and he looks good and there's a lot to work with. He could have a long career still.
Yeah, well, that brings me on to the next question. So we've got Lopez, Tank, Garcia, Devin Haney, one that we've not mentioned a lot. And of course, not forgetting Lomachenko, who pre-Teofimo Lopez was arguably one of the best fighters on the planet. Probably still is.
Yeah.
A massive future for the division. no, we all know in boxing, there's plenty of talk about I'll fight this guy, I'll fight this guy. But do you think they'll happen?
It's hard to see. I don't know. This is not me talking from a place of knowledge. With a streaming service and a pay-per-view service, I don't see how they could do a simulcast. I don't see how the profits would be shared. I can understand, so against Gervonta Davis with Showtime, which is Fox, I believe. So I can understand that they could do something with HBO back in the day, or even ESPN, because they'll charge the same price for the show and then split the profits, or they earn what they earn, whoever subscribes to which organization, which channel. But with a streaming service, which is so much cheaper than what a pay-per-view would be, how does that work? I don't know how that works. And that would be interesting with Joshua and Fury as well, with ESPN and obviously DAZN, over there with the relevant teams. So how does that work? That's the thing. So you would tend to think that the Haney fight would be the easiest to make. The problem is you hear promoters telling you how easy the fight's to make, but that's their job to tell you everything's going smoothly. That no, we're pushing for this, we're pushing for that. I don't want to say I don't believe a word that comes out of any promoter's mouth, but they're not going to tell you the truth because it's none of our business. They're going to tell you what they want to hear because they want to keep you engaged. They want you to watch their show. They want you to show that they want you to be fans of them, so you can side with them and watch all their stuff rather than their opposition. So, if a Eddie Hearn or whoever else, or Oscar De La Hoya saying this fight's made, or we're pushing to make this fight, then I don't always take that as read. But you would think the Haney fight would be, because the zone alone would be the fight that should happen next. Plus, also it was his WBC interim title. Maybe I've lost count and with how many titles are going around. But yeah, if it was the WBC third tier title or whatever you want to call it, then it should be Haney next for sure.
I think we can all agree. We all want to see the big fights happen. That's for sure. But moving on to your career, rewinding the clock, you were quite the amateur. World class amateur. Do you want to just talk about some of the highlights and what countries you travelled to, some of the bigger fights that you were involved in?
Yeah, I was an amateur throughout my pro career, to be honest. I boxed like an amateur all the way through it. I didn't really change my style too much. Actually, I probably got more amateurish as my professional career went on, ironically. But it suited me. And when computer scoring first came on the scene, it seemed like they sort of all got together and thought, how can we help this little Welsh kid, this little midget from Wales, progress? Because it just seemed suited to me, the original computer scoring system. Light puncher, lots of punches, high work rate, good defense. And I thrived on it. I turned pro at 18, so I turned pro very young. But I was competitive. I never really lost anything but a championship, a semi-final or a final. So I got to the European Juniors final. And it was my last sort of year as a pro. I had 1 year as a senior, then I turned pro. But I was in the ABAs and the European Championships at the same time. So I won the Welsh final on a Thursday against Paul Samuels, who ended up to be a really good light middleweight. Yeah. For featherweight, he could really punch, to tell you that, even at featherweight. I beat him in the final. Then I went up to Scotland boxing European Juniors, got to the final of that on the Saturday, got beat in the final, but really beat as well. And then drove to Gateshead, and then a day later boxed in the semi-finals of the ABAs against Alan Temple, who won the championships that year. And I think I had like 14 fights in like 13 days. I think I had 8 fights in 13 days, all against champions of their country. It was like the best sort of week to 8 days of my life. It really was. And it was just a dream come true. That week set me up. I really believed in myself after that week that I could compete at a pretty high level. And I turned pro with Pat Thomas and Billy Aird, and 2 ex-pros. Pat Thomas was a British champion at 2 weights from Cardiff. Billy Aird was a colourful heavyweight from Liverpool, based in London. And we did it small. To be honest, I didn't have no big promoter or anything. We had a few fights in Cardiff, and I had good competitive fights, to be fair, from the offset. And my first fight was against an undefeated kid, and I just sort of learned my trade. And then like everyone else, you need a bit of luck, and I had a little bit of luck, and and I took the fights when they were offered, and I got my break for the world title a few years later.
Is the Justin Murphy, you took the fight, basically when it was offered, I think, what did you get, about 48 hours note?
It might have been, but to my recollection, it was a day's notice. It might have been a bit longer, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't. And that was a weird one, because I was a featherweight. I know I won the world title at super feather, but I was a super bantamweight, to be honest. By the way, I'm not making excuses about anything. I overachieved, and the people, and the guy who beat me would have beat me every day of the week. But I was a super bantamweight boxing a super featherweight, so I never, literally, once I started boxing for titles, I never struggled to make the weight. It was as to a point where I would go into the weigh and eating a Mars bar, trying to wind the opponent up. And then he got his revenge 24 hours later when he got in the ring, and he was 3 times the size of me, and I was still a skinny little kid with a hairy chest. So it was, it sort of worked, didn't always work for me. But yeah, so the Justin Murphy, the British title eliminator, we got told it was just the worry about fitness. The weight wasn't a problem, because I never drunk, and I didn't smoke or anything like that. I didn't do anything. I was just a hyperactive, fit kid anyway, and I wasn't training for a fight. I wasn't really training at all. So it was just, I had about like a 2 pound to lose. That's all I had to lose to make the weight. And then off when we fought, and yeah, and I started off really fast, and I think I was dominating, and then I just ran out of steam in the last sort of half of the fight, and it ended up being pretty close in the end, but I did enough to win, luckily. But then didn't get my British title shot, which was a shame, because the British champion at the time then was Michael Devaney, who I'd already beaten in my 3rd fight. So I sort of felt like I would have beat Michael again and won the British title, and that would have been a dream for him, because when I turned pro, because obviously Howard Winston was a hero of mine, to win the British featherweight title was all I wanted to do, to be honest. I had no I wanted to be, my fantasy was to be welterweight champion of the world like Sugar Ray Leonard, but I was never going to be a welterweight, and I'm sure he wasn't going to be a Sugar Ray Leonard. So, to get a British title like Howard Winston would have been just a dream come true. So that was a disappointment. But like boxing, and every boxer will tell you, you get all those setbacks and disappointments. You just have to brush it off and move on, and stay fit and ready. And that's all I did. And then when the opportunities came, I took them, and that's how it went.
Yes. So was that one of your first rough experiences in boxing, that you were, you took a fight at a day's notice? It was promised to be, an official final eliminator, and then ultimately it wasn't. And I'm not saying it was a waste of time, but if you were told, oh, it's just an eliminator, you may have thought twice about taking it on 24 hours notice.
Well, I would have, because I don't know if you can see, I got the cauliflower ear because of it. Because at the end, I started off really fast, but obviously, being fit and conditioned for fighting fit is different. And so I'd run away for the last 6 rounds. But obviously, I was a slipper and slider. I could make you miss. But then obviously your timing's out. And he was a fit and good fighter, and defeated himself, Justin Murphy. And then he was swinging. He kept catching me on the ear, because when I was trying to slip shots, your timing's out. And my ear was literally like a rabbit's ear. I was bouncing around. When I stopped, it was still bouncing with me. And I think if I wasn't ahead early, I think the referee probably would have stopped the fight. And so, yeah, I got that for no reward for the money. I can't remember what the money was. If it was $2,000, it probably wasn't even that much. But the money was never a concern. But the money wasn't a concern for me. I wasn't in it for the money. I wanted to win stuff and then get the money. That's the idea. I wasn't Joe Kalzagi. I didn't turn pro with a load of stuff behind me. I wasn't a big, good-looking Gary Stretch type thing. No, I think I am, but obviously other people didn't for some reason. But so I didn't have. What did I have going for me? I wasn't great to watch, because my style wasn't really crowd pleasing. I was in a few crowd pleasing fights, but that was my opponents who did that, not me. If I had my way, I win every fight by landing 2 more punches than you did in that round. That's how I boxed. But I was good at it, so I knew what I was. So I knew I would only make money by winning titles, so I didn't care about the money. I boxed in Cardiff. My first fight was £300 cash, which I was chuffed about. I was earning more money for ticket sales, because I sell a lot of tickets. So, I'd make up my money that way. And so I didn't really care about the money. It was all just being a champion. And then when I got to that stage and I didn't win it, I didn't get the opportunity. It wasn't an official eliminator. I felt a bit disheartened. And then I couldn't get fights because I was undefeated. About 13 fights maybe then I was, 12, 13 fights. And then And then I got offered a fight in South Africa, but I was told it was somebody, the guy's record wasn't what it was. It was Cassius Balue, who was a two-time, maybe 2-weight world champion. But I was told he had a really bad record. And I was going the day before, and there was no box record. There was no really internet back then, really. Not really the one that was used massively by the public. And I phoned up a reporter, like that's what you have to do, and ask. And he did a bit of research, and I found out this guy was a 6-foot featherweight who knocked out like 14 of his 15 fights or something silly like that. So I didn't, and again, that was rubbish money, but it was a WBC international title. They were brand new titles back then. And I was going to take it. But then once I'd seen that, I just thought, this is not right. I'm not taking that. And then I gave up, stopped boxing for 12 months. I thought, what's the point? I said, well, I got a bit disheartened. I thought, I'm not earning no money. I had a young family. My young family had just split up, and I was in a bad place for a little while. And I just went, however good or not good I am, I'm not earning no money. And I'm going to go off South Africa to get beat up. And if I don't get beat up, I'm not going to totally dominate a 6-foot featherweight, because I'm a boxer, not a puncher. So the chance of me getting the win, even if I do win, are very slim. So I don't mind getting beat. I'm willing. No, you got to take that risk, but I'm not going to give everything against me, especially after the Murphy fight where I got the cauliflower ear for nothing. So but I've had more good experiences than bad experiences for boxing. That's the truth. It's all doom and gloom, it seems, but actually it's also a wonderful sport. It's a bit of a paradox, if you like.
Who offered you the fight with the South African?
Di Gardner. No, Di was a lovely guy, and I really like Di. I don't know him, we're not best friends. Di Gardner was a big manager and promoter back in Wales and South Wales, and he might have just taken I'm not saying he was trying to con me taking a fight for his money. He might have been, but more than likely he just asked somebody over South Africa who you got, and they said, we got this kid, this is his record, to get someone over so they could bash him up, maybe, that's how the business is. Now you just type on BoxRec or Google and you get all your own information on YouTube, and you get to see your fighters in front of you. Back then we never had the only fight I'd ever had the video of was Acelino Freitas, and it was the worst thing I ever seen, because it was just like a horror film. Like I didn't want to see that. You know what I mean? That didn't help me. That just made me more nervous.
So, moving title fight, your first title win was an IBF Intercontinental, and you got a split decision win over Peter Judson.
Yeah.
And then went on to defend it against Afif Geltiu. He went on to be he went on to win, I think, the European title at Super Feather as well. Yeah,
that's my best win. Afif Geltiu is my best win, and I sort of reconnected with Afif a few years back on Facebook, amazing as it is, and as I did with Peter Judson as it goes. The Peter Judson fight was great because I got offered I just signed with Frank Warren. He offered me a title fight, and I was really excited. Then I got told it was a super featherweight, and like I said earlier, I was going to be a super bantamweight, so I wasn't going to take the fight. My father said take the fight because even though he's strong, his style sort of suited to you. And he's not a big puncher, even though he's physically strong. And he was physically strong. So it was my first 12 round, and I took it. And again, I watched Peter. I didn't have a video, but I watched Peter on Sky a few months ago beat Dean Phillips, a big super featherweight from Swansea. So I knew how strong and tough he was. And it was a hard fight. It was a good hard fight. And and it was back and forth. And I think my speed and my combination punches, got me over the line. And the Gelti fight was really hard because he came in at late notice. But then I didn't know he came in at late notice, but then I didn't know who my opponent was before him anyway. So for me, it was late notice. But he could punch, especially the left hook to the body. He hit me in the 11th round with a body shot. And if I didn't have good legs, I was done because I just couldn't take a breath. But I could run away. I made a career of running away. So yeah, I just danced around the ring, and I think he sort of stopped and thought, what's going on? Why isn't he moving? And why won't he keep still? And then and I got my win back luckily, but I won quite convincingly, I thought, and that set me up. And then the most interesting part for that is that put me sort of like top 10, 15 in the IBF. So then I got a phone call. What's that? That's sort of like July. I got a phone call, November-ish maybe. Ernie Fossey was the matchmaker for Frank Warren at the time, And he said, "Do you want to? Can I tell you the story, or you've got a script? I don't know."
No, go for it. Yeah, go for it. Go.
Sorry. So Ernie Fossey, a real character of the game, phoned me up and said, I remember so well because I had one of these dodgy phones, the mobile phones, and I don't know how old you guys have.
Yeah.
Yeah, you pay. I think it's like 90 quid for it, and it could last 6 months or 6 minutes. It was just like a lottery phone. You know how long it's gonna last. So I had this phone that I bought off a mate of mine, and I give them number. They phoned me on that phone. They said, "Do you want to box for a world title?" So I told him to go do it. Like I thought he was taking the mick out of me. And then he rang me back and he shouted at me and scared the living daylights into me and said, "Do you want to box for a world title?" I said yes, and he hung up. So I phoned my dad. I said, "Dad, I boxed for a world title," and he almost hung up on me. He didn't think it was true. So and my dad saying, "When?" I said, "I don't know." "Who?" I didn't ask, Dad. "Okay, what weight is it?" "I don't know." "How much you getting?" I'll ring you back." I didn't ask. Anything. I didn't ask how much, who, when, where. Someone offered me a world title fight. I didn't, let's be honest, most of the fellas who get world title shots don't deserve them. And I certainly was one of those, so I didn't deserve it. I certainly didn't think I deserved it. And so I said yes. So now the real fun starts. So I get home, and then the next morning I go to my dad's house, and I'm like, box for a world title. I can't get my head around it. He better not be winding me up and all this. If you wind him up, I'm going to drive to London. I'm going to fill him in. He'd fill me in really fast, even how old he was back then. So anyway, I'm looking on. You've got Boxing News and Boxing Monthly, and we're looking at the ratings. So the IBF champion was Arturo Gatti. So I'm like, oh yes, I fight Arturo Gatti. Arturo Gatti knocks me out. He batters me, but I don't care. I'm boxing Arturo Gatti, who was super featherweight, was probably maybe his best. But then my father's going, I'm pretty sure he's moved up, and he might have had a fight already, a non-title fight already. I'm not sure. So the number one contender was Azuma Nelson. Now I'm going, what even better? So I fight Azuma Nelson now, who's about 39 at the time, and who's still good. Would have beat me back then, to be fair. But I'm thinking, now if Azuma Nelson's like the worst he can possibly be, loses an eye, gets cramp, has a leg amputated, as yellow fever, he's the worst possible version of him, and I'm better than I've ever been in my life. I might just nick a win, and then people will forget that he only had one eye, and he was in a wheelchair and all the rest of it, and he was sick, and he's 75 years of age. I beat Azuma Nelson, and that's it. It's on the record. Pat Caldwell couldn't do it. Jimmy Mack couldn't do it. I've done it, and so that would have been great, but it didn't turn out to be that way. It turned out to be a WBO title shot. I wasn't in their ratings. So you had a featherweight boxing a lightweight for the super featherweight title. As crazy as boxing is.
That's the power of Frank Warren with the WBO, though he's still got that hold to this day, hasn't he? I'm honest. I was a good fighter. I was good. I was good at what I did. I was better than what people thought. Because sometimes when you're not good to watch doesn't make you good. Sometimes being good to watch doesn't make you good either. Just because you're really good to watch doesn't mean you're a really, really good fighter. It just means you're excited, and yet sometimes you go the other way. So I was good. Was I champion of the world? Good. If I'm honest, I'm not. If I'm honest, why am I umming and ahhing about it? No, I wasn't. No, of course I wasn't. I won a world title, so I was. I guess in that respect, in my climate, but it's ridiculous. And there's 90% of the world champions since. It's certainly in Britain who should really be walking on saying they're world champions. They should be walking on saying they're good fighters, and maybe be European champions or British champions, because then that would be a better quality, and more valued again. But we got to be honest about it. I think we're all going on about too many titles nowadays, but it started, especially in the UK, when Nigel Benn, who was a genuine world class fighter and a genuine world champion, came over after he beat DeWitt and Iran Barkley with the WBO title. That's when it really started over here, because he validated that because he was a world class fighter over in the UK, and then it all took off, and then we had loads of fighters who wouldn't be nowhere near a world title, getting world title shots and winning world titles, and I was fortunate to be one of those. Fortunate and unfortunate, because I go to the Welsh Ex-Boxers Association when I can, especially the annual one, and they get all their world champions up on the stage. So you'd have whoever turns up. So it'd always be me, Steve Robinson,
Gavin Rees will turn up quite often. So will Enzo Mack now and again. Lee Selby will turn up as well most of the time. And the best fighter in the room, by a million miles, Colin Jones, has to sit in the audience. How embarrassed am I about that? You know, and all the fighters with me are good fighters, by the way, and maybe better than I. But the best fighter in the room, by a stretch, who genuinely boxed and beat world-class fighters, is sat in the audience because he boxed 10 years, 12 years before me and 20 years before the rest. No, it don't sit right with me, to be honest. I love a moan about boxing, and moaning about my career, my accolades is one of the easiest things to do.
Yeah, brilliant point. But you should never do yourself down there, because you've done something that, you've done something a lot of fighters will never even dream of doing.
No, that's why I say I think I was a good fighter. I think I could have won a European title, but and that's great. Wow, being European champion, being that level, that's phenomenal. Or maybe I would have boxed for a world title, because I think I was better than what you would have thought. And challenge for a world title, wow, against a Freitas, for instance, the one who beat me. He's a genuine world-class fighter. Well, you see what happened when I boxed him. I made a good account of myself, because I kept getting up and I kept trying, but ultimately I got battered, because there's a level between genuine world-class and people parading around at world-class, and that's just how it is. And we talk about the lightweights. They're like someone like Luke Campbell is cursed because he's in a weight where every fighter is genuine world class. Every champion, maybe Haney's still to prove that yet, but certainly Lopez and Davis are genuine world class, and Lomachenko are genuine world class fighters in any era. I'm not saying they'll be world champions in any era, but they're genuine world class in any era. That's a given.
Who do you consider to be the greatest Welsh fighter of all time?
Well, me. After I sacked myself off, it would be me. It's a funny one, because the first thing you say, you sort of bow down to Jimmy Wilde, and say for his record, it would have to be him, because the knockouts he had and the amount of fights that he had and the weight he gave away most of the times. But the problem is we don't have no proof of what he would come up against. You know what I mean? So I could go boxing Dominican Republic now. I get my license back, and I could have 25 wins, fighting nobody, shadow boxing. You know what I mean? There's no proof how good I am, and so you sort of have to say, Joe, I'm afraid you have to, because to stay undefeated for that long, wherever you're fighting, when you're earning good money. He wasn't earning millions, but he was earning, for a long time, but he was earning good money. That motivation, that takes a lot doing. And also, I've seen Joe out behind the scenes, and I know how good Joe was, and I don't think he showed half of what he could do. That's, there's a lot of fighters who've done that, so you can't use that, but just what I know. So, yeah.
Well, and I think people sometimes forget what how the fight between Kalzagi and Kessler really settled between two truly class fighters, and what an exceptional fight that was, especially through the first 6 rounds before Kalzagi found that other level that Kessler just couldn't match him. I mean, that, if you want to talk about, a fight of the year, which isn't like blood and guts off the floor kind of things, just like, wow, what incredible boxing. It was Kalzagi versus Kessler.
That's his best win by far for me. I think because he boxed a guy who was really at his peak, big for the weight, boxed the right fight to beat Joe, by the way. He had the right tactics to beat Joe. And that was so impressive that Joe could, to change tactics in a fight at any level is very difficult to do. To totally change the tactics. But to do it at that level, when you're up against a guy who hits hard in every hand, who's had the right tactics to beat you, and to change it like that takes... And that's not the corner, though his dad was great for him. That's his boxing brain. He naturally did that himself. I don't think he knew. See, Joe didn't know what he was doing half the time. Joe, most of his career, he just went through the full repertoire of his skills, and it was always good enough. Now, I used to tell Joe, and I was quite close to Joe for a little while, about you will stop every fight in 8 rounds if you don't try and stop him in 2. Because he would go out and try and knock everyone out really fast, try and over-impress, and then be involved in a scrappy, horrible fight. And some of his fights a lot of his fights in that reign were forgotten about and not great to watch at times. He got dragged into stuff, but he boxed a fella from Georgia in Europe, and the guy wasn't that great. But I said to Joe, that's how you should fight everyone. You use your speed, your movement. You picked him apart and then you blasted him out there. And I think that was like 8-9 rounds, and that was what he should have done. And the Lacey fight will go down as the showpiece for Joe because he did what you can't do in sparring. He was flawless, but Lacey was made for him. But still, he still had to do what he had to do. But the Kessler fight, you're right. The Kessler fight was what made, I think for me, what made the world, must have made the world stand up and say, yeah, this kid is not just good, he's tough. He can think on his feet. He's genuine world-class fighter inside and out.
Barry, sorry, can I just jump in there just to ask about Kalzagi, because I think you made a brilliant point about the WBO in the early days. I mean, I'm 42, so I kind of remember when I was around 12, people didn't really recognize the WBO at the time. And you're right, it was Nigel Benn that kind of brought it to fruition. I always thought about, when I was looking at Kalzagi's career, that he was kind of the beneficiary of staying in Britain and being a WBO world title. Now, I know you added titles to that down the line. Where does he stand to you amongst the likes of Tony, Hopkins and Jones? Granted that he has wins against a version of Jones and a more legitimate win against Hopkins over time when you look at that version of Hopkins. But where does he sit amongst those kind of fighters for you?
Leave me alone. Yeah. Jones was, I'd never seen a fighter like Roy Jones when he came on the scene, and anyone like that, from the Olympics, I fell in love with him, and he was just great. He was just an athlete, more than any athlete I'd ever seen. And so you have to say Roy Jones at his best beats Joe at his best. But it's not easy, because he might knock Joe out, he might have knocked Joe down, but Joe will, Joe's made the stern stuff. He's proved that. So Joe's a difficult fight for everyone. I think Tony's a hard one, because Tony was brilliant, but Tony could be lazy, and so I don't know. I think Joe has trouble with Michael Nunn, to be honest.
Good show as well, yeah. I
do. I think it's a horrible flicky style. In the end, he would have outworked him, but Michael Nunn was a nightmare, beautiful, fleet-footed until he lost his way. But I think as all-time super middleweight, because Joe's longevity. Because Roy Jones, they won there as long as you remember. So I think Roy's real only significant win at super middleweight, if I'm right, was Tony. I think he didn't I think he had better wins at middleweight and then up at Hopkins was middleweight and then up light heavyweight he had better wins. So I think if Joe maybe goes above him as all-time super middleweights of all time. Probably, to be honest, he might be number one. But of all-time greats, Jones is above him. Of course he is. He has to be. And that's not a slight on Joe, because Joe's a great fighter. But yeah, you'd have to say that. And if they fought to their peak, you'd have to go with Roy Jones. You'd have to. As much as it pains me, and I'm a Joe Kalzagi fan. I love him. But you'd have to. Of course you would.
Cheers, Barry. Thanks for being in.
Don't challenge.
Just switching back to your career, probably arguably your title, but then a career low with an issue with a brain scan. Do you just want to divulge into that? I mean, brain scans must have been new. When they, what would have been 95, 96?
So yeah, what happened is you used to have when you turn pro, you'd have a CT scan, which is a brain scan of its own, but it's not as detailed as the MRI scan. So I think it was to do with the Michael Watson stuff. That in '97 they started doing MRI scans, which are 10 times or more detailed, which is great. And then in 1998, that's the first time they had something and first time they had two scans of that magnification to compare to each other, which is great for the sport, great for health. But so there was a change in my scan. So I won the world title December '97, and my brain scan was due in March of '98. Ironically, I was meant to box Julian Lawsey in Paris. I literally did the press conference and everything in Paris in the February of '98, and then it got put back. Maybe I think Frank was trying to get on Sky. Sky didn't want it. I don't think, because they didn't want to pay any money for it. So but either way, it got pushed back till April, and I was happy with that. But then my brain scan came in, and there was a change in my scan. So the boxing board did what they should do, and they suspended my license, which of course is the correct thing. But obviously they didn't say anything. But you've had a problem with your scan. you can't fight. That was it. So I was worried. I went to see a doctor friend of mine. I went to see a brain surgeon, one of the top ones in the country. And he said to me, I can see what they're looking at, but as far as I'm concerned, you're under no more danger than any other boxer in the country. So from there on, I went to the boxing board with that information, saying, this brain surgeon, I don't want to say his name, I don't want to bring him into the thing, but they know who he was. He came to one of the meetings and said, this is what he's saying, what's going on? And then their Dr. Adrian Whiteson, who was a GP, which is obviously a great thing to be, but to be a little bit pedantic, is the jack of all trades in the medical industry, I guess, if I want to be an arsehole about it. And he said no. So I got a specialist in his field saying he don't see me in any more danger than any other fighter in the UK, and then a guy who's a general practitioner saying no. Now that's for the sake of the sport, not for the sake of me. So I had an issue with that. So, and also as soon as they said no, that's when I lost my world title, and I lost my paydays. So now there's an issue. So then I went to see a barrister. And I said, no, I did loads of brain scans, by the way. I dehydrated myself, did a brain scan. I did IQ tests, which I scored higher than what I thought I would have, actually, to be honest, which was surprising. And I sort of dined out on that for ages. The first thing I'd say when I meet a girl is not I was a world champion, is my IQ is 128 or whatever it was. And which is probably not very high, but for a kid from Ely in Cardiff who never went to school, I was over the moon. But anyway, so I was aggrieved by it all. And then when I went to they wouldn't give my license back. And they tried to use this Dr. Gasella's theory. And then I come back counter that saying, but Dr. Gasella's theory was used by the British Medical Association to ban boxing in the 80s. And you and your medical team rubbish that theory. Now you're using that theory to say I can't fight. That's rubbish. But ultimately they said no. So I went back with the barrister, and in half an hour I got my license back. But that half an hour took over 18 months of my life, pretty much, and also took potentially £600,000 out of my pocket. And for a kid who didn't have a penny, literally didn't have a penny, that's life-changing money, especially in the 90s for a featherweight who can't punch. And and then I hated boxing for the first time in my life. I know I went through little ups and downs, but then I hated it. So when I took the Freitas fight, I knew I was quitting. I knew I didn't want to be in there. I was just trying to chase the money I lost. I never thought about money before. The world title fight never mentioned money. Any other fight didn't care about the money. It was all about getting titles, winning stuff. Then the money will come, hopefully. Or if it didn't, I worked all my career, by the way. So I always never thought I was going to be rich from boxing. Just thought I could get a house and trying to achieve something. But the scan thing was. I felt like I remember going there and they said, the thing is, Barry, you're not under any danger now. There's a danger of increased senility in your later life. And I just said, well, that's a moral decision. I do my best not to swear here. So that's a moral decision, because what happens when I retire, once my license is expired, what happens to me then is none of your concern or business. Otherwise, test all the ex-boxers. And then there'd be no, if there was aftercare with boxing, there would be no boxing. If every ex-boxer had aftercare, years, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years after boxing, there would be no boxing. Because especially, maybe more so now, but back then, from the fighters from the 80s and so on, who have, irreparable damage, then there would be no boxing, because it does have an effect on you. The accumulation of punches is no good for anybody. But we take that risk. Nor is heading the football, nor is running too hard on a running track, nor is riding a horse. A lot of time, you know what I mean? A lot of time, all these things are trauma to the brain. Shaking your head around is trauma to the brain, so it all has an effect. But boxing, of course, is the aim is to punch you in the face. So obviously there is a danger to it. But there was nothing wrong with me to stop me from fighting. So they gave my license back, and my reward was to fight Acelino Freitas. So they didn't do me any favors.
I was going to say, what made you take that Freitas fight then? If you ultimately hated boxing, and then the board must have been on pins at the fact they took your license away because of that, and then you went in with an absolutely devastating punch.
Oh, listen, they must have hated. And also, the week before that, I did an interview over the phone, and then it got taken off the sports right. He phoned me, the fella. The sports writer put it on the desk. The newsroom took it on the news department took it and run it. So I think I was like, I'm not sure, it was front page of a Sunday Times or something like that. I transcended the sport. I was like the bald Naz, and it was like a picture of me looking really like this, and it said brain damaged boxer allowed to fight on, and we've got a retraction, page 13, and a little piece about this big. In the end,
as always is the case these days.
Yeah, but the damage was done, so the boxing board, the panic, and everyone panicked. Frank Warren wasn't ringside for my fight. No, Frank Warren didn't care about me. No, I'm not having to go with Frank. Frank's been great for my career, but no, Frank wanted Freitas because Freitas was a big, good-looking kid, a big puncher, and also Naz had just left, and he wanted Naz to box Freitas. So, he would have been ringside to watch Freitas defend his world title or my world title, which he'd already won. But even though no one was there. And it was farmed off at the Doncaster to Johnny Rushton on one of his shows. So, Frank tried to distance himself just in case something happened to me. Because even though if something would have happened to me in the ring, it would have no reference on on the issue in my brain scan, but it would have been brought up, of course. That's the thing. The thing I had was called the cavum septum pellucidum, which is there's a soft gap in your brain here. Kids have a little soft gap here if you haven't got any children, a little soft gap in the skull. And there's two membranes. And they join together over time as you get to like one or two or something. But they reckon 1 in 10 don't quite join up, and I might have been one of those. So obviously, because they don't lock quite together with the movement of punches and moving, it moved by 0.2 of a millimeter. That's all. It wasn't a massive gap. It was just a tiny gap. There was no tear or anything like that. No mixing of the fluids. There was nothing really. There was no other damage to my brain at all. It was that, but they'd never seen it before, so they didn't know what it was. So I understand the precautions, but if it was Nazim Hamid, Joe Kalzagi, Frank Bruno, Ben Eubank, all those fighters at the time, they wouldn't have took my license off me. I think I was a fighter, there was a world champion. There was pressure to get off the boxing board. Spencer Oliver collapsed, the match before and almost died. Luckily, thank God he never. Also, as well, in 97, that was 96, obviously. Michael Watson almost died. Thank God he never. So there was pressure with the medical association to ban boxing again. And I was the perfect thing. Here we go. We'll even ban one of our world champions on boxing if he doesn't pass our stringent medical requirements. But I was a world champion with no worth to anyone.
You weren't one of the money men, as you say, like now. So you were an easy target. Yeah,
I was. And they didn't go out for me. But it was just, a gift fell on their lap, and then a gift backfired on them, and then obviously I boxed the biggest puncher pound for pound on the planet at that time, and I couldn't punch to keep him off me, and so it must have been a worry for them. And I took a hiding, by the way. My head was like this, But I took the fight because when it got offered, and you don't turn down a world title shot when you're someone like me because you don't get the opportunity again. And also, I've been a world champion. I want to be a world champion again. I genuinely believe I'm world class now because I've won it. I'm only 25, mind, when I box Freitas. Yeah. So I think I can win a world title. I remember saying in an interview, I said, can no one give me a chance? Of course he wouldn't. If I was being a pundit on that show now, I wouldn't give me a hope in hell. I just said, he can't beat me on points, which he could have, to be honest. But he's not going to beat me on points. We all know when he hits me with the first big punch, if I'm on my feet, he's not going to beat me. And it was right, because the first big punch he hit me with, I wasn't on my feet. He hit me on my ass, and that was the scene, the sort of set the scene for the rest of the fight. Really, he threw a punch, I fell over. He threw a punch, I fell over.
Yeah. What? Now happily retired, so moving on from that, and you're in the world of punditry. How did those opportunities come about? I think the first time I remember I seen you on telly was on the Boxnation sofa with I think Steve Bunce and then later Stevie Lillis.
Yeah, I did a few little things for Sky, 97, 98, and I did one in 2000. I moved to London after my last fight, so I boxed in January 2000. Moved to London with my ex-girlfriend at the time. She was like a dancer of some sort, and I haven't lived in Cardiff since. I've moved up here, and I live in Surrey now, and I've stayed at this sort of end ever since. And I don't like money. I want to spend the most I possibly can, so I live in the most expensive place you can find. And but then I was doing security for X Factor, Britain's Got Talent, and stuff like that. Boxing left me. I left boxing behind. I watched boxing on the telly, but I wouldn't go to any shows so much. And and I wasn't bitter. I always you always feel a bit empty, and boxing always it's your first love, and it's a difficult thing, and you always feel sorry for yourself at times. because you've seen the problem is with boxing. Very few boxers make big money, but you might have your 15 minutes of fame, or you might be relatively famous without earning huge money. And if you're earning good money, it'll go pretty quickly because you're not earning millions. But you've seen stuff. That's the problem. It's like they've opened the door, to a new life, and then they close it on you, and not on purpose. That's just what it feels like. So you almost never quite fulfilled after. That's why boxers turn to drink and drugs and get violent and do silly things, because you're looking for that buzz, not just people calling your name, but that you're never quite fulfilled because you've seen what's out there, and you're never going to get near that in any other capacity again. Very rarely for any other fighter. So, but anyway, Boxnation came about. Steve Bunce pretty much was looking for people who he didn't have to pay to go on his show because Boxnation didn't have any money.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to go on there, but my friend was friends with Steve, and he kept nagging me to go on. Steve didn't really want me on there. He would have had me, but didn't beg for me. But I kept saying no because I didn't want to feel good and then go back to my normal life. So, but I did in the end. And then Jim Bentley, the producer, said, "Do you want to come back for the show?" And because I only lived like 35 minutes from Hammersmith, I kept getting work like those German shows, which we do off tube in the studio, and we do we do the commentary in a sound booth rather than go to Germany. It was cheaper to get me than to get Paul Smith down, train or plane from Liverpool, put him in a hotel, pay him as well, and that's how we started. And I just went from there. And luckily enough, I don't shut up, as you found out tonight. I'm sorry.
No, don't worry about it. It's been great. And
that's how it. And I was just lucky to be in the right place at the right time. And also another thing, like my boxing career, not to say no to anything.
Yeah. Okay. What happened to Boxnation when you left? Because it's hard to describe what it is now. It's the gift. It keeps on going. I mean, it's like it keeps on going, and then it goes away, and then comes back. What happened? Was it funding again, or? Well,
I think it was always a struggle for him. To be honest, I don't know the business ins and outs, and running a TV channel is hugely expensive. By the way, hugely. It should have gone to an app a long time ago. That would have saved them loads of costs, and we'd still be going. But I honestly think that it still could have been going. To be fair, I don't think money was invested. Money that was when it was a rare opportunity where they earn money, maybe a Canelo Khan, Golovkin, Canelo. I don't know. I could be talking about my back end. I don't feel like that money was reinvested back into the channel to help it grow. To be honest, I don't. But I don't know that. And whoever invests in that channel, Frank Warren and Bill Ives and maybe whoever else, it's their money, so they can do what they want with it. We weren't really privy to anything like that, so it was a disappointment the way it ended for us because there was no real massive warning. It was just like, you go in next month and listen, we're winding down now, so there'll be a little bit of work for you, but there's no boxing now, don't come in Saturday. It was a bit like that, so that wasn't great. But that's what businesses are. They tell you before, and you could jump ship, maybe. I don't know, but yeah, I don't know what happened to it. And it was showing Speedway the other month, and then Gaelic Rugby, but Premier Sports have got involved.
Yeah,
they've surely been more. By the way, I've been subscribing for boxing since day one. I still subscribe today. To be honest, I don't know why. I just haven't never done subscribe. So they've had my wages back off me. I would have thought by now.
I think it's nigh on impossible to unsubscribe from Boxnation. I see that many people trying to do it, and then they keep people on the phone, and they'll stay on for a month, and then they chuck a couple of fights in, and next thing they're subscribed 6 months down the line.
Yeah, so that's right. But but look at the zone now what they're doing. I think Boxnation could, if they would have went to an app earlier, Boxnation could have been doing MMA and boxing on an app because it's two separate feeds. And they would have got the MMA log. I don't watch MMA at all, but they're fanatical, and I think it could have worked. I do. I really think it could have worked. But it's easy for me to say because I don't know the ins and outs, and I haven't got a pot to piss in, so I'm not investing no money in it. But it was great though. It was great for us boxing fans. I know we all moaned and groaned. People moaned all the time about it. Why are you showing this fight? When you showing that fight? Buncey's crap, Jonesy's crap, Linus is rubbish. This that. Nothing's perfect. But we got to see fights we never see before, and let's be honest. And it ups Sky's game a little bit, and I think even DAZN wouldn't come. It's shown other platforms it can be done on a budget. So imagine if your budget's huge, what you could do. So yeah, it was great for boxing fans. It was great for a long time, I thought, and for me personally, it changed my life because it put me in a whole new career path, and also financially because my boxing money had long gone and I was earning a living and paying my mortgage, but now I live in a bigger house and I struggle to pay that mortgage now as well. So
So speaking of that, that's actually a good segue for a question that I had, Barry. Looking back, this is kind of totally out of left field, but looking back, at the Roy Jones Jr. Mike Tyson fight that we recently had, the tough thing with boxing for so many people is you hit a certain age and you have to find something else to do. The bread's taken out of your mouth. Yeah, I mean, do you think that there is something there, not only for the top tier fighters, but then, for some guys that were undercard fighters, not only that there could be opportunities for guys over 40, over 45. Why can't we have a dream fight of Ricky Hatton versus Prince Nassim Hamed at cruiserweight?
I hope you're joking, but it's my issue is the one thing for fighters, undercard fighters, I gotta say, they were schoolboy stars. That's when people forget this. You can show, like, you see some kids who didn't make it as a pro, but I can remember them for schoolboys and juniors, and they were told they were going to be world beaters. That's the thing with boxing. You're built up really quickly. I was so lucky that my family was so down to earth. They followed me, supported me, cheered me on, but not one of them ever kissed my backside. No one ever told me I was going to be great. That don't sound great. I understand, maybe I'd have a different attitude. It might have been a better fight if they did, but always keep your feet on the ground. So you always knew, you never got too big-headed and stuff like that. But you're told you're great all the time, and then you turn pro, it don't work out for you. But your whole life is is boxing. Say me, for instance, like the world champion, I retire, on paper, I can't do anything. I mean, I can't get a job. So I got to get a job pushing trolleys in supermarkets. Nothing wrong with that job. I'm not slating that job. But when you've been a world champion, you've been on telly, thousands of people, hundreds of people calling your name, then you got to go and do that. It's soul destroying. It'd be like for me now, if my career finishes tomorrow. No, I'm freelance, so I'm looking for work all the time. But if I don't get no work from boxing, where do I go? I got to go back to doing security if I can get that job again, and if not, what do I do? So you sort of gamble your whole life to be a boxer. But also, I tell these young kids, it's a privilege as well to be able to live your dream in your 20s. But you do have to plan and do a course or do a college course or get a job or get a trade for when you finish. That's the most important thing. That's what no one tells you about that. That's it. But let's go back to your last question about fighters boxing at a later life. A Legends Tour in football is brilliant. You got all these ex-football players who can't run around anymore, but they got some brilliant skills, and you can have a laugh, and it's great. The rugby, touch rugby, 7-a-side, it's not real tackling. All these legends, they can't run as fast as they can, but they got some great tricks and a bit of speed now and again. It's great to see. Boxing, unless it's really an exhibition and a tippy tapping each other, which is fine. I don't begrudge Tyson and Roy Jones earning fortunes. They've earned fortunes. They should look after it, to be honest, but I don't begrudge them doing that. But where does it end? What happens if they go for real? And what happens if someone gets hurt? Now, I talk about the long-lasting effects of punches. The older you get, the more accelerated that damage becomes. You can't recover. Your brain cells are not reproducing. It's a worry. It's a worry. Listen, I don't talk as clear as I did in my 20s. Thank God, because I talk so fast, and I talk fast now. Imagine how fast I was back then. But you listen to Mike Tyson now, not the lisp, to how he talks now, to how he talked in his 20s and 30s. There's a massive difference. And look at Roy Jones. There's a huge difference with him. Though he's a great talker, and I'm not having to go at him. It's the same with us all. And I'll be worse as I get older. So taking punches at that age is no good. Now you might not get a fatality in the ring, but in 10 years' time, the deterioration, if they have a few more fights, could be catastrophic. I don't, and I think it's a dangerous game. And if you want to ban the sport, that will help it. I think if you want people to if you start having a seniors tour, as great as it seems to see all these old legends come back and fight each other, I think we're going on a dangerous path. It's a dangerous path with having people get licenses, YouTubers and stuff like that. Not them fighting. I think people fighting is a bucket list. Great, have a fight against someone at your level. But how easy it is to get a professional license, a boxing license. In no other sport can you just walk up and be fit and get a license. If you can do 10 press-ups, you can get a boxing license.
So you were honestly concerned with
yes.
watching that fight, everything from the announcement all the way through. You're like, did you think when they announced that, you're like, oh, this is going to be a domino effect and this isn't going to end well.
Yeah, I thought, well, it opens the gates for all the other stuff. And it's happened now. Glenn McCrory, and people are delusional. Like, I don't know Glenn McCrory. He was a good fighter. No, but nowhere near Roy Jones's level. Nowhere near that fight. And a great commentator, by the way, and still should be doing more work, I feel. But he's delusional if he thinks he's, I don't know what who wants to buy that. Who wants to pay for that? And also, you're not a friend of his. If you pay for it, you might get money in his pocket, but you're not helping him because. And my worst fear was what happened. It was successful. I didn't want. I didn't want someone to get hurt, but you almost want something to happen so it stops it because. It's going to go on now. You're going to get more. Tyson's going to box again, but what's going to be then? Are you going to get Riddick Bowe versus Holyfield again?
Well, I think you're safe enough, Barry, with Nazim and Ricky Hatton, because I don't think either of them are going to make cruiserweight anytime soon. So I think you're safe enough there, dude.
What about Steve Robinson? He's like a man mountain. So where does it end? These guys are not like say Cal Froch versus Joe. Like Joe's been retired too long, but Cal Froch is newly retired. That's not too bad. But again, that's still a dangerous game. I'm not a lover of it. And
Steve Collins was chasing Roy Jones for a wee bit there as well.
Yeah,
Collins
looked good too.
Talking to delusional. Fucking hell.
It's mad. I think it's mad. I know it's easy. They think it's easy money on it, but put a head guards on them and do it that way. I don't mind that. I don't mind the white collar stuff. I don't mind the YouTube boxing. The YouTube boxing is great. Good luck to them. They're earning loads. I'm just jealous they can earn so much money. That's the truth. I don't think they should be able to get professional licenses. I think they should.
Even if you put headgears on them, mate, you're still taking headshots and stuff, and it still rattles the brain, So it's really.
For me though, for the sake of boxing's reputation, people can do what they want to do. People can go and take drugs, and in Japan you can go lay under the table, and a girl defecates all over the table. Apparently, and allegedly, I don't know nothing about that. But no, what I mean is, people do all sorts of things. People do all sorts of things, and that's up to them. But to distinguish it from professional boxing, make it clear that it's not professional boxing.
Yeah, I agree.
The two ex-professional fighters doing their own thing. That's the way I would like Nate Robinson versus that fella Logan Paul. That was a professional fight.
Mate, that was one of the knockouts of the year. Technically, it's a pro fight, but it was a hell of a knockout. I mean, they were absolute. That Nate Robinson, I think a 15-year-old amateur beat him, but that's technically a pro fight, as you say.
Well, I worked on Freddie Flintoff. I commentated on Freddie Flintoff versus the American journeyman he boxed, and like it was embarrassing. I'm not going to go with Freddie. Good luck to you. But everyone involved in that, including me. I had to do my job. I got to work. I got to talk. Yeah. But everyone involved, and I put myself included. Hang your heads in shame, because that's not for Freddie. Good luck to you, Fred. You did the best he could do. He tried his hardest, and he was in a real fight. But in his mind, but for the sport, that don't help the sport grow. And all this YouTube stuff, I don't think that helps the sport grow. I don't dislike it, but I mean, all these eyes watching it, they're not watching it, they're watching him. Because next week you'll go off and you'll do karate, and they'll all watch karate next week. They won't follow boxing, they'll just follow him whatever he does. Because that's and understandably. So I don't see it. It's a quick fix. It's a quick hit for promoters, for these YouTubers. It's a quick hit. They go in, grab a load of money, get out. I understand that. But for the sport's health, I don't see it. Ryan Garcia is different because he's a boxer who has a massive social media following. So, but he's a boxer. He's always been a boxer. So
let me play devil's advocate though on this, because and I know you're talking a few rare examples in the sport though, and it's tough to and I think it's a perfect example because you're trying to figure out, well, when should somebody have told him to stop? And that's Bernard Hopkins. One fight before Joe Smith Jr. is knocking him out of the ring. I believe he was schooling Beirut Shumanov and even putting him on his ass late. And it's tough. It's really difficult. And I think that's why the creation of the medical battery test, maybe shoring them up, is going to be the best way to figure out who can and can't be in the ring, because you wouldn't want to tell a George Foreman, a Bernard Hopkins, and Archie Moore that they couldn't have entered a ring because of their age, because they were totally capable, proved by their victories at that advanced age.
You will get the exceptions. They're exceptional athletes. They're exceptional fighters. You will get that, of course you will. But and you always will. But there's always a fear with them. But you always get it. Actually, all these people they go on and you know, just your Walcott won more title later on in his life. You know, but they're superstars and they're super athletes. But the rule. But you know, I didn't know. Roy Jones is. You can see visibly. You can see he's nowhere near what he was. I've seen it while he was still boxing active pros. How the deterioration, how bad he's become. Mike Tyson, you hear him, you see him. He's nowhere near he's not as sharp as he was back a long time ago. You know, because the damage, because they've taken a lot of damage for their sport, and they've earned every penny they've had, and they've earned their status of legends. You know, these are. I'm talking about guys. They're so much better than me. It's like we do a different sport. So I understand who I'm talking about. You know, they're gods to me, but no, they shouldn't be given professional license. No, I don't think they should. And I understand if you pass the medical requirements, but at some point, I remember I went to get my boxing license in '92, professional boxing license '92. So I'm a European silver medalist. I Welsh champion a few times. I've been winning loads of different titles. I was nervous about because I was 18. I thought they were going to say no. That's what it should be. It shouldn't just be because I passed the medical test and my eyesight's okay. Mm-hmm. It shouldn't have been because of that. It has to be more. Where's your experience and and what have you done and the damage you've had and all that sort of stuff. So all these things should come into play.
Do you mean like maybe like a driving test? Like show us a jab, show us a straight from your backhand, show us a hook.
Well, I think before that was never needed because everyone who turned pro had an amateur background, so you knew that they could box.
Well, you used to be able to fight more when we were younger too.
Yeah, that's true. To whatever level you're at, you knew you could fight. Not everyone's turning pro to be a world champion, of course, and not everyone's going to be. But I just mean that. No, I don't think get scare Roy Jones, stand up Roy Jones, and show us your full combination. You just look at Roy, go, listen, Roy, you've had a long career, mate, and and they've seen him get knocked out by Enzo Maccarinelli, and Enzo, who wasn't nowhere near as good as he used to be, by the way, who could still keep whack, and you could see Mike. Look at Mike Tyson 15 years ago. Shouldn't have been boxing. So the Mike Tyson today definitely shouldn't be boxing, even though he's boxing. I understand he's boxing a Roy Jones, but they can also punch. This might be my personal preference, and people might think I'm full of shit and what am I talking about? And I didn't watch it, by the way, so it might have been great. I don't know. I didn't want to watch it because I didn't want to be party to what it was. Because I don't want to. Because what if I enjoyed it? I want to watch it again. I don't want to see that. I love boxing. I love it enough to say no, to discredit my achievements. That's how much I love my sport. So this is not to have a dig at anyone. This is not to try and salt on my high horse. I love my sport, and it's a great sport that constantly kicks itself in the face. It's the slut of sports, boxing. That's exactly what it is. It's the slut of sports, and but it could be so beautiful. It really could, and when it's good, there's nothing better. But all these things don't help it, in my view. Maybe I'm old man now, and I'm past my. I know my views outdated, but that's my opinion.
Well, we ask you because we can have our opinions from the sidelines, but I've also never been staring down Popo as he's dropping combinations on my head. So it's definitely a more valid viewpoint than I have. Because the point where we come from, I guess, might be from romanticizing these fighters that we grew up with, that we love so much, and we want them in some manner, if it is safe, to be able to make a living doing what they love, because we don't want anyone to have bread taken out of their mouth. That I think that's one of those. It's a touchy subject. It really, when it comes to if someone can make a living or not, and we worry. But I mean, that you make a great point as far as it could have a heck of a domino effect and make it so we don't even get to have the undercard fighters, make it so it's not even worthwhile because the cost of insurance, blah 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 blah. It eliminates boxing at the end of the day. I could see that happen.
but it's good. It's open now. It's happening. It's going to happen often because they did a clever thing. They had they made it entertaining. They had Snoop Dogg commentating, I heard, and they have singers and rappers there or whatever. They had the whole entertainment thing. So it'll appeal to the different demographic, and it also appeal to the older fans who want to see their old time heroes box again. You got YouTube for that. Go and watch when they were good, not when they're no good. Yeah. For me, I don't see, but it's opened up now. And also, I think I heard the pay-per-view did very well. So
that's $1 million buys.
Yeah, exactly. So there you go. It's a money maker for everyone. That's the problem. And until there's a fatality in the ring, it'll keep going. That's it. It's just I'm moaning about it. I don't know. Actually, why did I moan about it? I wasted literally 40 minutes of your time talking about stuff that I know is going to continue. To be honest, because if it does well, if it makes money, as we know, especially in boxing, if it makes money, it makes sense, and it'll happen. Well, look, listen, Floyd Mayweather versus McGregor was the biggest start of it. That was the worst start of it for me. That was just ridiculous. That was what happened there. You get to 50-0 boxing a guy who's never boxed before. It's like that's not a slight McGregor. He's a phenomenal athlete and great in his field. But let's be honest, it was a sparring session, and and anyone who's boxed at a good level, who's good, who's sparring with people not as good as them, you know exactly what that is. And and they took so much money out of it. And I don't begrudge him any money. Good luck to him. But it opened up. It's opened up now. It's opened up the door to all sorts of stuff, and
and you can argue that Sky, BT, any sort of TV channels are kind of to blame for it as well by picking these sort of fights up and giving them publicity. I mean, you're bouncing around now, Channel 5, Sky, BT, when the Boxnation door shut. You seem now not to feature as much on BT, and I know you are freelance. Is there something that went on there? Because I know that every time we saw you on BT, and from, say, the hardcore boxing fans who, listen to the commentary, the feedback was always really good, and it still is now.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I think the Fury, while I don't know, BT won't use me again. That's the truth. Pretty sure. Certainly, whilst there's a producer there, he doesn't want to use me ever again, and that's just how it is. And I don't really know what I did wrong exactly, or if I did anything wrong, or whether he just preferred somebody else. And that happens. You've got to take it as it is, But I didn't. And as much as I want to be on there doing everything, it is what it is. You just got to take it like that. No, I can't be as arrogant to think that they should have me on. I demand they use me all the time. It's just that nobody told me. That was my only issue. Is nobody told me. I just literally just didn't get a phone call, and then I had to chase them, and they wouldn't give me the one person wouldn't give me a proper answer. And then in the end, I forced an answer on him, and he sort of made out that text ended the relationship. So it was a bit disappointing like that. And I don't know whether this guy was doing work for Sky, but but listen, I don't want to slag BT off. BT were a great company to work for. Yeah. And the people I worked with, the talent, they call it talent, the people on screen. They're not, you might think they're talented, but that's what they call you, unfortunately. But they're friends of mine, like Buncey, and I've known Buncey for a long time now, and John Raw, and I've worked with John quite close, and Paul Dempsey's a lovely guy. Richie Woodall is possibly the nicest guy, in the sport. He's a lovely man. So, I don't know David Hay, but he seems like a nice fella, but I don't really know him. So I don't want to say he's nice or not nice. I don't know. But it was good time. I had good fun, and they looked after me when I worked for them, and I couldn't say a bad word about them, except for not telling me they didn't want it, that they got rid of me. That was the only thing. So you feel sorry for yourself. No one likes rejection. That's the truth. And Sky have been good to me. The Sky have given me as much work as they can give me with the pandemic going on. I think I've been doing more for them. I wouldn't be taking the job of Matt Macklin, but I think I'd be doing more work for them. But the pandemic hit, and obviously I'm a freelancer, and that's just an extra expense they don't need to spend. But they've given me as much work as they can, so I appreciate it. But I need more work. So if anyone wants a grass cut, get in contact.
Mate, we do big numbers on this podcast, so I'm sure we can put anything forward if anything comes through. Last couple of questions. One question we ask every guest is we've got, I think the fight we all want to see this year, Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua. How do you see it going?
Fury. I've been Fury for a long time. Though I do have to say, when Fury first came on the scene, I would have bet my house on David Price knocking him out. It's crazy, isn't it? You look so far back then, I would have put my money on Price all day long. But he's adapted. He's such a natural boxer and thinks so good on his feet. He gives you opportunities, like most Mavericks do. They give you opportunities to catch him. But I think he can win in so many different ways, where Joshua has to go through him. Joshua has to be the Joshua of old, really, before Ruiz, where he has. I don't think he can outbox Fury. So you never know. Things can surprise you. I didn't think Fury could go in and dominate and knock out Wilder the way he did. But you gotta go right through him. He punches in nice straight lines. He punches inside his body frame really well. Does Joshua? So those things will work, because Fury might flick a jab out a little bit wide and he can go right through the guard. But you got to step on Fury. I think you got to get inside him and make him work, and hopefully catch him close. And then Joshua's a good finisher. But I massively favour Fury, and I think he could stop Joshua as well. To be honest, I know he's not a one-punch finisher, but I think he can make Joshua work so hard chasing him. And I think he'd have to go back a little bit, revert back to the move in there, Fury. But the spinning on the pivot on the front. No, everyone knows I love a pivot. The pivot on the front foot, making Joshua look for him all the time. That's hard. Missing when you're a big fella it drains your energy. So I would fancy Fury and maybe a late stoppage, if not points. But it's the fight I want to see, and it's a massive, huge fight. I don't think it's the most exciting fight in boxing that can be made, but it's the biggest fight by a million miles.
I agree. And the last one, it's from one of the listeners now, Michael Thompson, who's paid £5 in a super chat to submit this question. And he says, ask Barry about all the sports science and nutritionist stuff, and if you think it's valid compared to the old days about how fighters used to essentially make weight, and how, the differences from back then and now.
I gotta be careful. I slagged off CrossFit like about 7 years ago, and I got so much grief for it. And all I meant was that all these things, nutrition, new ways of training, are fantastic. They're great, and they can only help you and better you. Of course they can. Eating the right foods and making the weight comfortable is got to be a good thing, and not so much for your endurance in the ring, but also for your protection as well. About so your brain, the fluid from your brain's not going out, so it's not like a pee in a tin can, so you're less likely to get brain damage and stuff like that. But none of this can be replaced by pure basic boxing training. That has to be the first and foremost, and everything else has to be an add-on. I think nutrition's great. I don't see fighters as fitter, to be honest. I think everyone looks cosmetically better. That's what everyone looks like. Everyone looks in great shape now, where they never used to before. But because I think a layer of fat's not a bad thing to burn up when you need something to burn up, don't you? You don't want, you see all those big, massive, muscly guys. Once the oxygen gets in there, they're punching like they're underwater. So. But I think it's a good thing. It's got to be a good thing. But I don't see anyone any fitter. You see some of these 15 round. You watch, Yaki Lopez and Matthew Saeed Mohammed. You watch them go help for leather twice, and you can't tell me there's fitter fighters than that at light heavyweight now today. So who could box at that pace and that punishment with those little tiny gloves. So it's. Yeah, I don't see anyone. I don't see fighters any better than they were before. Because skill is skill, and I don't see many fitter, but they look better. And also, I think they probably it's better for you when you retire, because you're probably not having the damn, like me now. Like I didn't have a long career, but you might hear it actually.
Oh,
yeah, that's my shoulder.
Yeah.
You could hang me on a tree at night. That's why I sleep like that every night. You could hang me on a tree and leave me there, and then. So the damage, because we didn't do the right techniques and warming down, didn't eat the right food. You just as an amateur, you just sweated the water out until you were dehydrated and made the weight. That was how it was. So they know a lot more now. That's a good thing. So they're safer. I think that's important. Yeah, but that's about it. I don't think it makes. Maybe it does make you fitter, but maybe everyone else is fitter and it evens out. But I don't think it does, to be honest. Some of the pace the fighters would fight at 15 rounds, I can't see some of these fighters doing that today. Maybe what do I know?
And just one final one, actually. Did you ever think about bringing dusting off the gloves when Prince Patel gave it the Boxnation couch, or Was that one of them that if Sky would have come offering the millions, you would have taken that?
What's that? Oh, to fight him?
Oh, Prince Patel, yeah.
Oh no, you know what? Like
Cougs wants a shot as well.
I didn't because I don't respect him now. Obviously, the biggest thing that I don't like about him, not what he said, because he's just a young kid trying to make a name for himself. You know, he's an idiot, I know that, but trying to make a name for himself, and he thought that was the way to do it. But he picked the wrong guy because I'm not massively famous. I'm not a guy who goes around bragging himself and like saying how good he is. And in my little world there at Boxnation, I think I was relatively liked. So, I mean, I don't like saying that. I can make me feel like a wanker, but you pick an arrogant guy who's rich and famous and better than me, wouldn't you? Like Cal Froch. I like Cal Froch, by the way, but Cal Froch, Cal loves himself. He knows he was good and he tells you he was good. And so do it to him. That'll make a name for yourself. Cal would squat you as well at the same time, but either way. So I wasn't angry at him when it was happening. I thought, what's going on here? This is weird. After the show, I did say a few things in my air, but nothing major. The biggest heartbreak for me was that I'm attached to him forever. You know what I mean? And for a guy who doesn't like, I never had no ring walk music. I didn't wear a dressing gown. I didn't call publicity. My whole career was wrong. I didn't care about that. I didn't want to be famous or I didn't want to be known. I know it's ironic that I do work on TV, but I'm not a massive name, and I don't ever slag myself out to do it. I just want to work. I love boxing, and being involved in any capacity is great for me. And I know, and if I can earn more money from this and doing other jobs, I'll do this, of course. But I don't want to be. So that was like being attached to someone like him, who's not a good fighter. He's not rubbish, but he's not a good fighter. And I'm always tagged with him. Not so much now. But this always gets brought up, and I'm not gonna go with you because I'm at peace with it now. But if you would have asked me this 3 years ago, I wouldn't have been so happy with it.
Yeah, of course.
No, it doesn't matter. Because the kid's being beaten and humiliated. But the worry was he goes on to be a good fighter, and he was proved right. That was the thing. But I think he was just lost. The kid's lost. To be fair to Andy Ayling, who was Frank Warren's right hand man. Andy didn't want nothing to do with him after that, and I think that was the nail. I think that's what done it with Warren and stuff. And so I liked that a little bit, but yeah, he tried to make a name for himself and just end up messing up his career, really, didn't he?
Yeah, completely backfired.
But don't feel sorry for him.
Oh no, absolutely not. I mean, I thought you were kind when you called him an idiot. I mean, the guy's a complete arsehole. But I don't think he's the sharpest tool in the box. I think he's trying to make a name for himself and didn't realise and thought just slagging people off. But what really done him is once Coog and Garcia stopped using him for iFilm London, that was his platform. Once he stopped using him, he was done. Well, he went on a tour of Eastern Europe, picking up all these fancy belts, didn't he? Knocking out these 1-40 Hungarians and Bulgarians and stuff. And
yeah, well, and he's not the only fighter who's done that, to be fair. But And what you do you can kid yourself. It's like being a really good football. It's like I play park football. So I can't play. I'm useless at football, but I play park football sometimes. And you get someone who turns like vets football. You get someone who turns up who's like 22, and is pretty good. So why would you want to play with at this level? Because you're really good at this level, but it's a false goodness, isn't it? It's like you want to challenge yourself. You know what I mean? You want to challenge yourself to see how good you really are, not just keep going lower than your level so you look brilliant.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what Patel's doing. He's boxing people below him, so he looks fantastic, but in reality, he's not. That's the shame. Yeah, that's the shame. But anyway, good luck to the kid. I don't wish good luck to him at all. But
yeah, I get your point.
Yeah.
Well, there is talk that he has since apologised. I'm not sure if you've seen that, but
no, someone showed me. But that's not. He's not apologising to me. He's apologising about what's happened to him. He wants to get relevant again and get back and stuff. And I don't care if he goes on to be the best fighter on the planet. Good luck to him. I won't shed a tear anymore about that. But if he doesn't, I won't shed a tear about that either. And I'm not going to help him. And I'm not going to validate his apology. That's his. That's you got to do. You did what you did. And someone text me on Twitter saying, "Come on, give him a break now." He said sorry. He's man of say sorry, but he can't reverse what he did.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it was. You go murder my whole family and then say sorry 10 years later. I go, okay, fair enough. I said sorry. Like at least you repented. I know it's not the same thing, of course. I like to exaggerate, but that's what it is. But either way, he didn't win a world title, did he? That's the bottom line.
He did not. And finishing on that note, I just want to say what an absolute pleasure it has been, Barry. I mean, I think I told you 15 minutes usually we do with guests, 20 minutes tops. And I think we've done the best part of an hour and 20 minutes. But it's been a brilliant, brilliant listen. And I want to say thank you for coming on to the podcast. The reaction already has been excellent. And I've no doubt through the week we'll get a lot of positivity as well.
No, thanks for having me. Sorry, I don't shut up. See, I live in a house. I got 2 kids and my missus, and no one lets me speak. So no one listens to me. So I get some poor guys who are muted on a conference call, and I get to wail away. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. But thanks.
Mate, listen, we're known for therapy as well, so if just call in anytime you want, talk away.
Yeah.
You're always welcome.
We're brothers in arms there. How do you think we got to 400 episodes? We're all fucking shut up at home. That's why we're on here every Sunday night.
Every Sunday night, we're on here talking to the boys just to vent after like a week of frustration with the woman, you know.
So how many of you do this then together?
It varies each week.
Half dozen plus, give or
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, it's unbelievable that it started, and it's always been a show for fans just to BS about boxing. Not exactly worrying about if there were censors listening or if anyone cares about the opinions. It's just what guys think about boxing if they're sitting around on their couches, and
or women.
Or women. Don't forget the ladies. Yeah, as they said in Congress, amen and a women apparently.
Or how they identify. We don't know that yet.
So yeah, but hey, thanks for coming on, and maybe next time we'll talk to you about all the times that Carl Froch has talked to you about being the best Carl Froch in the era of Carl Froch.
Do you know what? I've only met Carl. I worked with Carl a couple of weeks ago on the weigh-in show for Pulev and Joshua. That's the first time I met him. To be honest,
you'll have to let us know about that next time. That's he seems like a character, so that should be a story in itself.
No worries. Listen, thank you very much for having me on. I've actually quite enjoyed myself. Yeah, it's been good fun and great questions as well. And
it was a blast, and the people enjoyed it. The chat's just blowing up. So thanks a lot, Barry. We really appreciate you.
Yeah, brilliant.
Thanks, Barry. You take care.
You too.
Well, the best, mate. Cheers.
Cheers, Dad.